All right, well thank you guys for coming. I'm really excited to talk with you guys about digital tools for substance use, particularly in the context of youth and emerging adults. So talking about technology and science is one of my passions, so excuse me if I get a little too excited. All right, so just so you know, I have no conflicts of interest. I am supported by 2 grants from the National Institutes of Mental Health. That being said, everything that I say in this presentation is my opinion and not that of the National Institute of Mental Health. I have to say this. All right, so to get started, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background about the use of technology for addiction, particularly when we're talking about digital tools and also computer-based tools and web-based tools. So the difference between those two, computer and web-based, are e-health, electronic health, and then m-health, mobile health, refers to using over a device, like a smartphone or anything like that. So currently, the state of the science shows that we have utility tools built out within the areas of personalized assessment and feedback, self-monitoring tools, prevention interventions, as well as treatment interventions. Most of these computerized and mobile apps are based on behavior therapy models, and most of them focus on self-management tools that are commercialized. We also have some decision support tools for clinicians, but most of our apps are currently patient-facing and really geared towards the individual who's struggling with a substance use disorder. So I want to focus on a few data collection modalities. The first one I'll talk about is passive data collection. So this focuses on anything that your smartphone collects data for you on. Your Fitbit that I'm currently wearing collects so much data. Your smartphone collects everywhere you go, your geolocation, your sleeping patterns, the rate you're texting, how many phone calls you make, who you're talking to. All of that is passive data collection that's collected through your smartphone. We currently are working on building big data analytics and artificial intelligence to actually be able to compute algorithms that can eventually feed into substance use treatment, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The other form of data collection is active data collection. So this is when you require the user or the patient to actually enter data. This is primarily what we use today in our digital tools that we have for substance use. So what that requires is motivation from the patient to actually enter, hopefully daily data. It usually requires a prompt in the system to make sure that people are actually entering data, and it also requires the individual to be accurate in how they enter their data. So this is usually used in self-monitoring tools, assessment and feedback tools, and then also journaling or diary. So I want to focus on talking about different types of tools that are currently in use, and I'll focus first on web-based programs because they've been around the most and have been researched the most. So everything that I present today has an evidence base and is scientific, at least has some science behind it. So the most common web-based tools that we have today are related to alcohol, and we're starting to see some related to marijuana. And these are primarily with adolescent populations and have been tested the most with college drinkers and college marijuana users. So the most commonly used ones are the Drinker's Checkup, which you can Google. I think the Drinker's Checkup is actually available online for free. At least the initial assessment is. The eChug, which stands for Electronic Checkup to Go, and that focuses on alcohol use. And then also the Marijuana eCheckup to Go, or eChug. All of these focus on personalized assessment and feedback for people at high risk for a substance use problem. And then some of them also link to skills training within the modules. The therapeutic education system is a really good example of a skills training module designed for prevention and intervention of substance use disorders. This is backed by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. You can find it on their website. And what this is it's an interactive tool that's used for patients in conjunction with their in-person therapy. So typically, your therapist, if you're already engaged in therapy and engaged in counseling, will utilize a system like this to help you go through homework assignments. And it's focused on really developing skills for the patient outside of the clinical therapeutic setting. So I'm going to bring you to present day. Web-based programs have been around for about 20 years. And you can see that based on some of the graphics, they're a little bit antiquated. I would consider a lot of the web-based programs that have evidence-based support to be a little bit archaic. They're not user-friendly whenever we were developing these programs. And I helped to develop something that's similar to the drinker's checkout. We really didn't take into account user experience, user design, any of these tech terms that you'll hear about today. Fortunately, with a lot of our app-based programs, we're starting to merge the IT world with the science world. And so our products are becoming a little bit better. So as far as app-based programs, I'll talk about them within the context of patients, within the context of parents and family and support, and then also within the context of healthcare providers. So for parents, this is a great tool. It's backed by SAMHSA. It's available on their website. And this tool is really designed to help parents be able to actually have conversations with their kids about underage drinking. It teaches you how to have the conversation, what to say, what the do's and don'ts are, and really where to go and how to keep that conversation going. This is a really good tool that is backed by quite a bit of research. This is another tool for clinician training. It focuses on SBIRT, which stands for Screening, Brief Intervention, and Referral to Treatment. For clinicians, we're starting to see some tools that are available for CEU credit to give them training in evidence-based substance use treatment and prevention interventions. But what we haven't really seen is a lot of research that supports these tools and supports improvement of the skill set of the clinicians. In addition to tools like this, we have clinical decision-making tools that are starting to be developed. They're not currently tested, not evidence-based, but we're starting to see them come out. This is a tool that my lab is developing in conjunction with the School of Information and Eric Nordquist's team. This is a tool for patients with opioid use disorders. And what we're trying to do is integrate artificial intelligence and big data analytics, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, into a mobile app. So this is really where we're starting to see the past meet the future, which is really exciting. And you can also see that the graphics, we're starting to take into account user experience, user design. It's a lot more user-friendly, and the whole goal behind that is to increase acceptability among the users, and then also increase outcomes. If they're using it more often and if they like it, then in theory, it'll improve outcomes. This is another project that my team is working on, and this focuses more on changing the system. So we've talked about patient apps, we've talked about parent apps, and we've talked about apps for clinicians. Now we're going to talk about apps to improve the system and the clinic workflow. This is relatively new as far as figuring out how to integrate technology into improving the workflow using apps. And what this app is designed to do is it's designed to improve screening among clinicians, so that's where the clinical decision supports come into play, referral to treatment, and then integration and care coordination across the system. In order to develop a program like this, you have to map out the entire system, you have to map out the entire provider journey, and figure out where the pain points are along the way, and then develop a solution that meets all of those pain points. So where do we go from here? I would argue that we are about to see a huge breakthrough in technology and addiction science, which is really exciting to me. Also in the field of psychiatry. I think within the next 5 to 10 years, the field of psychiatry and psychology will be completely revolutionized, and I think technology has the biggest impact within those fields. Virtual reality has been around for a while. It hasn't been good, and it's also been way too expensive. We haven't been able to use it. Within the last year, costs have come down enough to where we can actually start to develop programs that can be implemented in school settings, implemented in the criminal justice setting, and then also implemented within clinics and in therapeutic types of situations. So what is virtual reality? This is where you have a computer-generated scenario that creates a real-world experience. We don't have a lot of research backing virtual reality, particularly in the field of addiction. There's some that backs virtual reality in PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but what we're seeing is an explosion of funded research in this area, which is awesome because in the next 2 to 5 years, we'll be able to see just what this technology is capable of doing. The primary disorders that this focuses on are environmental trigger disorders, so like PTSD, alcohol and addiction problems. So whenever you get into a trigger situation, then you are able to learn coping skills in that virtual environment that you can go and take into the real world. What's really interesting is that there's preliminary data that's supporting that this type of intervention can actually change our neurobiological circuits and rewire our brain to function in a better capacity. So virtual reality for addiction. What this would look like within a substance use intervention and treatment setting is you would create common scenarios for drug encounters. So whatever those key trigger situations are for the individual, you would create scenarios within this virtual environment. And then you would put a headset on and be able to walk around within that virtual reality environment. And then you would have choices. So the individual, it would be like a game. They can make choices as to whether or not they're going to drink a beer. And then they'll have consequences based on that. So it's really designed kind of like a video game. And you're sitting there in a therapeutic situation where during the moment when your cravings and urges start to increase because you're exposed to that cue, you can develop responses and strategies for how to handle that situation, and then take that out into the real world. So this is one of the most well-researched virtual reality interventions, and it's preliminary. I should say it's not efficacious yet. But it came out recently. It's a virtual reality cue refusal video game. So you can see here, this is an example of what a virtual reality environment looks like. You have the individual, and then you place them within this virtual environment, and then you put a game to where they have to choose whether or not he's going to drink that beer, and he's learning refusal skills through this module. You can also see that there's a lot of gamification, which we'll talk about next. He has a score of 90. His best score is 210. And you can see there are a bunch of badges here that help to motivate them to engage in this portal. Here's another virtual reality for teenagers that has been developed in Australia. This is an evidence-based VR intervention, so it's been tested in a randomized clinical trial, and they found that it does help teens to reduce their substance use. The design behind this is a house party, and the teens can choose their storyline, they choose their character, and it's a gamified drama of a house party scenario where they actually go through and they have choices and consequences for those choices. So gamification, like you've seen in the virtual reality environments, is really important within mobile app development, but then also within these virtual environments. We found the more realistic these environments are, the less likely people are to engage because they expect everything to be like the real world. So gamification is really important in these designs. And what it does is it really drives participation among users. It increases the likelihood of behavior change, and it also increases the likelihood that they'll learn and retain the memories that they had within that virtual environment. So gamification focuses on intrinsic rewards rather than extrinsic rewards. So increasing self-esteem, increasing pride for completion of tasks, and then having progress, showing successes is really important within any type of application or virtual reality intervention that you're developing. So artificial intelligence, this has been a really big buzzword within the addiction field, particularly within the last 8 to 9 months. So I want to describe what it is first. So artificial intelligence is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. Machine learning is under the umbrella of artificial intelligence. So it's a sub-field of artificial intelligence. And it provides systems the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. So how can AI impact addiction? So there have been so many articles within the popular culture that have come out that are saying artificial intelligence may be a key to helping solve the opioid epidemic, to helping people with substance use disorders. But we don't have the research to back it yet. This is such a new field that we're still learning quite a bit from it. One component of artificial intelligence is digital phenotyping. And this uses machine learning to develop a digital phenotype of an individual. So this is where I think within the next 5 to 10 years that we will truly transform psychiatry. So think about this within the context of substance use, within the context of bipolar, within the context of depression. What is digital phenotyping? This is a new approach to measuring behavior from our smartphone sensors, our keyboard interactions, and various features of speech and voice. So, for example, someone with depression, when their voice slows down, and when they stop texting and stop calling so much, you'll be able to use machine learning to detect different behavior patterns that can predict when somebody's going into a depressive episode, based on the data that comes from your smartphone. So, can we do this for addiction? That's one thing I'd like to discuss in a little bit. One of the key features of digital phenotyping is that it might potentially change the way our healthcare system operates. So we currently operate within a value-based system of care. This might be a key to using measurement-based care, because currently we rely on self-report from patients and biomarkers that we get from blood tests and things like that, which aren't good for psychology and psychiatry, which aren't good for the field of addictions. However, if we can develop digital phenotyping, this might be a key to improving measurement-based care. So how does digital phenotyping work? You have your smartphone, you have all of the apps on your phone, you have your phone sensors, you interact with your keyboard, and then you have your voice and speech analysis. So all of these produce data, and this data informs a digital phenotype of your behavior, of your thoughts, so what you're saying on Facebook, what you're saying on social media, of your mood. And then all of this can contribute to more accurately, and more precisely diagnosing mental disorders, monitoring for remission and relapse, and then also risk prediction. So predicting when people are at risk. So what's the current state of digital health? Like I talked about at the very beginning, we have a lot of evidence to support some of the archaic interventions that we've developed using the web-based applications. These are very easy, they're convenient, they're cheap, but they have really small effects. And so they tend to not be utilized as efficiently as we could. Also, the problem with our evidence-based interventions, they're typically not available commercially. Scientists do a terrible job disseminating and commercializing the products that they develop. However, startup companies do a great job of developing apps that are not evidence-based. And then, so what we need to do is we need to really team up with translation and companies and startup companies and be able to translate these products that are evidence-based into commercially viable products. So where do we go from here? I want to spend the rest of our time together really discussing what we've talked about and where we should go towards solving the problem of substance use with youth and emerging adults. So how do we use technology most efficiently and successfully for this group? What are the ethical and moral considerations associated with big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality? And really, what's the next steps? Where should we go from here? Thanks, guys.